Good evening, everyone. Welcome at our third Heartbeat. Our guest tonight is Robert Cailliau. Some people might know him, others might not. For the people that work in our industry, he needs no introduction. But maybe for the others, Robert, can you quickly describe your work and just so everyone knows why we invited you to be here?
And I'll cut you short if you say something stupid. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
No, you can introduce yourself.
You want me to introduce
of course,
myself?
Yes.
Well, that's unusual. Well, first, welcome everyone, and thank you for inviting me. It was nice to do this. Okay, I was born a long time ago, when the beasts could still talk, as they say here. I did my studies in Ghent, and then to do my PhD I needed a computer. It wasn't possible any other way. And this was 69, 70, yeah. So computers filled this hall. We had all of 64 kilobytes. And don't worry, the algorithms inside to get to the results were just the same or even cleverer than the ones today, but there was no user interface. Anyway, I needed computers, so I went to study computing, and I never came back out of that. And then I went into hybrid computing. I'm not going to elaborate on hybrid computing. And finally discovered that there were very many computers at CERN, the European Laboratory for Particle Physics. Went there for a project between them and the university in '73. And then in '74 I applied, I was accepted, and I spent the rest of my career and my working life at CERN. And there I had actually four different internal careers, if you want. I first did computer control engineering of the accelerators, and we needed documentation. You write everything from scratch. You can't buy accelerators off the shelf. So we needed documentation, so I wrote a documentation system, wrote a text processing system, and many details. And during that same time that I did that, Tim Berners-Lee was a contract programmer, and I knew him vaguely. He was there only for 6 months, and he did some things with that system, and also because of the network that we're trying to do, he was keeping track of his stuff with a self-made hypertext system. Then later on I became head of office computing, did a lot in office computing. And then finally, when Tim came back to CERN in '88, I think, it was, he was somewhere completely different, far away from where I was working. But we both were studying hypertexts because we had a network at CERN, and I certainly wanted to do all the documentation accessible to everyone. We were working on the Large Hadron Collider. I'm talking '88. We were working on the Large Hadron Collider because, of course, you do this many years beforehand. And we knew the need for documentation and doing it accessible without having to phone the guy who has the file on his computer, which was like that. And so then Tim's boss, who was a friend of mine, brought us together in '89. So I saw Tim's proposal for doing the hypertext, and I thought, well, that's what we really want. And so I teamed up with him. There was also a restructuring. Anybody who has worked long enough in the same organization knows that restructuring is usually the time to either grab power, or if you don't quite agree, hide for a while. So I hid for a while. And I thought this was the perfect opportunity to push this hypertext business. And so '89, I worked with Tim on that. In 1990, we rewrote the proposal so that it would be acceptable for management. And then at the end of 91, we had a first server running. But the reason why it succeeded was that the actual objective was to test the program development system that was on the next computers. I mean, NEXT, the Steve Jobs company. So it was a sort of a can't lose situation where either the web sort of proved its usefulness, or if not, at least we had a real life test of the next computer and its usefulness for the Large Hadron Collider. Well, as you all know, of course, the web took off, and then it became so important that CERN could not really deal with it because we're a physics institute. So I went from very early on to the European Commission, tried to get them involved and so forth, and then this explosion happened from 94 to 99 about. And then I left that project as well. Tim went on to do the consortium. I stayed at CERN. And I did my last and fourth internal career, which was public communications. So I was head of external communications for a while, and then I retired. So yes. I retired now.
Okay. A lot of people ask me how we actually managed to get you here. It's quite a story actually, which is pretty funny. I still have your email. You told me you looked it up also as well. So you mailed me on January the 17th, 2014. So that's 4 years ago, right? And
only 4 years ago.
It's only 4 years ago. Yeah, which is crazy, I think, as well. So actually, it was because of a tool that we made, and you really liked it, and you still use it. You explained to me. And you said that this is the first tool that actually works, which was of course very nice. And I replied to you that first, when I saw the name coming in, I was like, I remember that name, and like, who is that person? And then I googled you, and then I figured out it was you. So it was a pretty funny moment. And then I remember that we had like an email conversation, and then you told me, like, as a PS, I saw the mail yesterday, like, I'm coming to Belgium next week or something to visit my family. If you want, we can come over. And that's how we actually first met, and we kept keeping contact since then. So,
and I left my wife in the car for
that was very hard. So he was visiting our office.
And we got carried away.
Yeah, he was carried away, and you brought like a lot of things for us. Like, for example, this is what is it? Can you maybe explain it's the notary?
What is this?
The document that you gave us. It's in our office since then. So
yeah. This is this is a copy, of course, it's.
You can't find it on the internet. That's right.
You can, and the second page is even more important than the first one. No, this just shows how things go in the world and how one should be extremely careful with history and believing what people tell you many years after the fact, 100 years after the fact or so, because it's all gotten very mixed up. This document, I worked with the legal service of CERN to put the web in the public domain. That's what it says, right? And this was necessary because we wanted to avoid that any of the big companies would put their hands on it, patent it, and grab it, and then lock it up. So once, of course, it's in the public domain, you can't do this anymore. So that's what I did with the legal service, and I drew up this document and published it, and we were safe. The web was safe for the world. And I said to the legal service, and please, can I have a notary certified conform copy of this, and please give me 2. So they did, and so on the other side of this there is a red stamp that says, you know, copie conforme, machin truc. What was it, 30th of April 1993? No, we can you don't need to look it up, it's a date that is engraved in my memory. and so I got this copy with the red stamp on it and another copy with the red stamp on it, and they filed their copy. And I don't know what I did with the second copy. I think I gave it to Tim, but I'm not sure. I kept mine, of which you have a copy there. And then later, CERN lost theirs. So nobody knows what the second copy is. So the original copy, the original of that one with the stamp on it, which is in my basement, which is below the city level drains, so if my pump stops, it floods. The copy that's in my basement is the only copy known that says the web is public domain.
It's a very important document.
Yes.
Not, like, maybe you should put it in a safe or something, no?
Well, I don't know.
I will keep it for you if you want.
Well, no. CERN wanted mine back and I said no. So, no.
No, but it's a fairly important milestone, of course, for the internet, because if that didn't happen, we would not be using it today. It would still exist, of course. Maybe someone else did something similar, and then maybe it would be Microsoft or any other big enterprise,
no, I
IBM.
I think it wouldn't come to. I think that would be a standard. I think
so.
That would have been seen.
What intrigues me is, like, you and Tim were making this thing, and all these events were happening. When did you really realize that you were onto something big, like that it really took off?
Probably when my wife said, and now you're going to keep all these t-shirts because they are historic. No, I think it was a bit before that. We saw it. There were two things there. There was not just the explosion of the web inside academia, because the internet was completely funded by academic sources, by universities. It was never free, right? Universities paid very heavy sums to get the lines. But then in around 93, 94, several computing companies wanted to use the internet to be in contact with the computing centers of the universities that they supplied. And so they were the first ones to come in, and then the others. So the internet, not the web, spread a bit everywhere. And obviously, apart from email, the use for the internet was the web. So the two went sort of, I think, a bit in parallel, yes. Yeah.
So there is a lot of things, of course, these days. Also, people see in the news about the internet, basically, and there is things like the dark web, fake news, all the privacy issues that Facebook has. I'm glad that the U.S. Senate yesterday decided to keep the net neutrality in the U.S.
Oh, they did?
Yes, they
did. Oh, great!
Yeah. So
applause, everyone. It's not true.
It still has to pass through Congress, but yeah, they did. So. What do you think about all of this? What is your opinion?
Well, I say this often. I'm just a user. You know? I was there at the right time, at the right moment, but it's 30 years ago, nearly. So what we did then was something very technical. It was to help our friends. It was to help the Large Hadron Collider. More or less, that was not really in our minds, but it was a good excuse. But then all the stuff like Facebook and so, I mean, these are things that I'm just a user.
Yeah, of course.
And we set up the first search engines with the University of Geneva, but that was 93. I mean, these things, it's all completely different now. So I'm just looking at it from the same perspective. One thing I can say is that we failed. The web technical community failed spectacularly in two respects, I think. One was that although we always wanted it to be as easy to write as it was to read, that hasn't happened except through Facebook. But Facebook is really a central computer with terminals, right? So it's a bad to me, it's a big bad thing. And the other where we failed spectacularly, and I discussed this with somebody from a news group. Can you wave your hand?
The standard.
The standard, yeah. Where is? Yeah, there is. The other thing we failed miserably was to find a way of directly paying the author of the information.
Yeah, that's
the micropayment system. And the micropayment system was also at that time impossible, because to do the encryption would have made the envelope around the piece of money much more expensive than the bit of money. So it couldn't happen at that time. But it's a failure.
Okay. So we know CERN for the internet, but they have also made and also for the Large Hadron Collider, but they have also made a very big impact on other things in informatics and computing in general. Can you maybe tell us a bit more about other projects that you think are have been very useful or important?
Well, in computing, we've always sort of been on the bleeding edge, tried things out that didn't yet exist, brought things in that were then picked up by companies sometimes. We've done very many projects with digital equipment, with IBM, with you name them, they were all there. I can tell you the anecdote about Nostata and so forth. Unfortunately, there weren't, hard as we may have tried all the time, there weren't enough European computer industries, unfortunately. But physics in general, not so much CERN, I would say, but physics in general certainly has always pushed the limits of computing, because we just always need more and more computing, and that was the whole,
I remember you mailing me a picture of one of the first prototypes of a touchscreen, right?
Oh yeah, that was one of the things we did, but that was more computer control, so that was not directly, yes, correct. Oh heck, I should have brought it with me.
No worries.
I forgot.
We'll bring it next time, right?
Yeah, well, and there, there is also a nice example of how history gets sometimes completely lost or neglected, or the people who work on something don't think of it that way. Long time ago, and having been greatly involved in that particular computer control system, so which had human interface, very advanced user interface, because this was 73, remember, 1973. We had these consoles with televisions and not a mouse but a trackball, and these things where we could control the whole accelerator from one console by choosing different connections and networking. Network which we also had to build ourselves. But one part of it was a sort of a touch screen, and I mean the tactile screen that you all have on your mobile phones today. It was of course crude and primitive. It was 1973, but it's exactly the same technology. And then I moved away from working on that, and one day in one of the labs I saw one of those touch screens, just a bit of glass with the gold,
the cables coming out of it,
the gold things spattered on it, and the cables coming out, and I thought, oh, that's a nice souvenir, I'll pick it up. 20 years later, it turned out that was actually the original prototype, and I've now got it, but and I can prove it because I've shown it to the guy who actually made it, and he's confirmed it.
Is it also in a place where it can float, or?
Yes, it's in the same place, yeah.
Nice, good to know that.
It's in the same basement that can flood. Yeah, I agree. No, but it will, don't worry. I have calculated that if the pump stops, it will take, it floods 1 millimeter per day.
Okay, so you get a notification on your phone or something when it's...
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Do we have the network here?
Yeah, I'll tell you.
Do we have a
later.
network here?
Yeah, of course.
You do? Okay, I can look at the pump from my phone, yes.
So maybe another interesting fun fact is this computer, which I got from a while back. is which type is it? Do you remember?
This is an SE, I think.
right?
Yeah, that's a later.
It's from my birth year,
Mac,
so that's Robert gave it to me. Again, thanks for that. I don't know if I really thanked you in person for it already, but you also told me that now, if I fully understand, so this is from 1988. The internet is also really made in 1988 because that's when Tim started on it, right?
But the web, Tim, no. It was the web started 80. Well. The name World Wide Web was given in 1990.
Okay.
So sorry to disappoint you, but it's a bit older than that. It's a bit older.
A lot of things, of course, are also going on in technology in general. We were talking about payments for news. Do you still keep in touch with technology and how it's changing? Like, do you follow up with blockchain, Bitcoin?
Oh, don't talk to me about that. Can you explain the blockchain to me?
I could try, but we have people that can do that way better, but I can try.
You know how it works? Really?
We had a workshop on our retreat, annual retreat, where Dimitri, one of our partners, actually explained how it works and really showed it in real life.
Down to the...
Yes, so if you want, he can show you tomorrow morning he can show you.
Okay. Because I read a lot about it, and
it's really nice technology.
It's
going to replace the notary,
maybe.
For example. So but for example, for payments, like you were explaining the payments on news websites and encryption and all that things, that's maybe a good use of blockchain, I don't know.
But the blockchain grows and it doesn't scale.
Yeah, that's true. But there is also solutions for that, I think. So.
Yeah, like the Atlantic Web.
Yeah.
It also doesn't scale. Right.
And what about artificial intelligence and all
so
the VR?
Don't touch the blockchain yet, okay? I mean Bitcoin or whatever they are. Any blockchain technology. Don't touch it yet. Wait.
So artificial intelligence and VR and all the things that are going on, are you still trying to really follow that, or
I follow it a bit, yeah, but no.
Did you already have like a VR experience?
I had a very nice experience at the Magritte exhibition in Knokke last year at the coast.
Okay.
There was a virtual reality show there of Magritte's works, and it was really, really very nice. So yes, of course. And before the Large Hadron Collider was built, we had to make these underground enormous caverns, much bigger than this, dug out 100 meters underground or more, and we had to fit the experimental equipment in there, which of course you have to put in bit by bit and so on. So we had virtual reality visits of those things in...
It's not with the goggles, it was like a 3D...
Yeah, it was, 3D. You put a headset on, and there was a thing on, so when you looked around, of course, yeah. Cool. But it was relatively crude compared to what you can do now. Yeah, sure. But
so,
yes.
In one of our previous discussions, we also talked about software that would write itself. I remember that you had like a link on your website about it or something. And do you think that one day we will be replaced by machines after all?
Not by machines, by a machine.
Yeah, or by a machine.
By a machine, yes.
Is it Facebook or no?
No. God, no. No. I mean, there will be. I think there will be some. Well, there's an if, but I'll come back to the if maybe in a minute. If we get real artificial intelligence, then we won't understand it at all. There's just no way that we can understand that. 2, it won't compete with itself. So you will not have multiple artificial intelligences. They will just connect up and cooperate. They have no...
They're smarter than humans anyway, so...
Right, there's no sense in competition.
Yeah.
And we will not understand that. But there's 2 ifs, in fact. One is, what will the motivations be of an artificial intelligence? We have motivations. We're not, tonight most of us are going to go to bed. Maybe some of us will not go to bed tonight, I don't know. But we won't pull the plug on ourselves. We won't stop living. We are motivated to continue living. And we're motivated mainly biologically and mainly by sex, of course. But our motivation is built into us, built into here by evolution. An artificial intelligence, what motivation does it have to keep living? It doesn't need to procreate. It doesn't. So what is it? How is it motivated? Does the concept of motivation even apply to it? I don't know. And then the if that I was going to come back to is that the way the laws of this universe are is that they permit biological life because we're here. But do they also permit artificial intelligence? That is not certain, because you know also that what's in our brains here is really, it adapts itself continuously. It's a living organism type of thing, whereas an artificial one has to simulate that in some way. So it's either biologically evolving, constantly changing, which we already know, or it's not. But if it's not, is it possible to a high level? And that depends on the laws of the universe. And I don't know. I'm stopping here.
Okay. So that brings us to the last question of the interview session, which we ask all our heartbeat guests basically. If you compare the world today with 10 years ago, what do you think is the biggest difference?
10 years ago.
That's when madewithlove was founded.
My mobile phone has gotten worse.
Okay.
Much worse.
A bit smaller, right?
Not even.
Okay.
But much worse. Do you want me to say something that got better?
No. What do you think?
10 years ago.
Yeah, maybe make it easier for you. What do you think it will be? The answer would be in 10 years.
Oh, I'm not going to bet on that. If
what do you hope?
I hope that things will be more peaceful and more cooperative between all the peoples on the planet, which is very, very, very necessary, and it's not going the right way.
No.
But how was it? Okay, I was a bit facetious about 10 years ago. I mean, certain things have gotten better, certain things have evolved, but I think I haven't seen in the last 10 years anyway, not seen any big breakthrough. Have you?
Good question.
Things have, well, no, things have got, okay, I mean, if I think about what were my computing facilities 10 years ago, yeah, they were slower, but fine. If I think about the way I lived, I mean, in my house, food, shelter,
you could
heating.
not monitor your flooding system 10 years ago, right?
I had the alarm system, yes,
Right.
certainly, yeah. But not the visual stuff, no. So that's gotten a little bit better. My heating system is 30 years old, and my neighbors have built worse. So, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. Thanks anyway. So are there any questions for Robert from the audience? Things you want to know from him?
I didn't want to sound negative,
No one?
I just like to provoke. Yes, sir.
There is a microphone. We're going to use a microphone because I didn't tell you, but we're live streaming this also on the internet for our colleagues abroad.
Yeah, you do. Come on.
Let's maybe quickly start. I see there's a question from the internet, right?
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah.
We have a question from a colleague in Madeira who is asking, when you look at the web nowadays, is this sort of what you envisioned back then, or is this how different is it from what your initial view was?
I'm not sure we had an initial view.
That's smart.
This is the same. This is a question very similar. Like, what was the first web page? There wasn't one. It evolved, and we adapted it. We did have at one point, a bit later on, we were thinking in terms of the virtual library. The virtual library, I haven't checked recently, but I think it's still there. The virtual library is sort of a distributed Wikipedia, right? So that's the sort of thing that we were thinking about. And then after that, things went so fast that we were just running behind it, not in front of it. So I think the vision stopped. Yeah, I think the vision stopped at the virtual library, which was essentially the idea that the experts in each field would have servers about their subject, and they would all be linked up. So it was sort of a distributed Wikipedia.
So you would probably be very excited about when you see Wikipedia right now, what it has become?
No, I think the Wikipedia is fine. Of course, again, since it is central, it doesn't scale. But, well, it doesn't scale, but it's like Google, which also doesn't scale. There is still so little of it that it can still all be kept together. So no, I'm a Wikipedia editor. I'm very happy with the Wikipedia, and it's the way it went. It's centralized, but it's self-regulating. It seems to work well. It's fine. But I think our vision for what we wanted to happen never went much beyond that. After that, there were so many other people with so many other ideas that sprang up everywhere that it was impossible to follow them all or have a grand vision. I mean, what's the grand vision for a road system? What's the grand vision for electricity distribution? You have no idea what people are going to do with it, right? So it's yeah, I think that's...
And if you don't have a vision, it can only get better, right? So.
And if you don't have a vision, it can only get better. Correct. Yes. Now that's a good one. Can I quote that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So there is a question in front here. Maybe if someone can bring the microphone.
Come on. Out with it. There's the microphone.
Oh, you have to put it on. It's press the button once. Yeah. That's it.
Okay, so at the risk of this being a very obscure question for the rest of the public, at the time that the World Wide Web was created by Tim, there was also this thing called Gopher.
Yes.
And I've always wondered why that was not good enough for what you wanted to do.
Well, Gopher was there slightly before, and there was... my microphone went.
You can just click it on again. Yeah.
Yeah, my microphone fell down. Sorry.
Put it in the little thing. There you go.
That was me just waving my hands too much, I suppose. Yeah, there were many systems. There were many better systems, actually. I have a graph of scalability. If I draw it up, functionality, and to the right, scalability. So at 0, it's not scalable and has no function. Then the web is at the right and at the bottom. It's extremely scalable and has no functionality. And things like, and then it goes gradually up and up and up. Go for somewhere better functionality, not so scalable, up all the way to the microcosm, which was absolutely beautiful, but didn't scale at all. There was anything and everything in between. Did you ever see a demonstration of Hyper-G? Okay, that was really nice, and had all the editing facilities, but because of that, and all the link checking, there was never errors in it, but because of that, it never grew bigger than the University of Graz, where it was invented. A campus, and after that, just too much. So.
Okay. Any other questions? One from Frederick. The other Frederick. I don't think it's on.
Sorry. Earlier you talked about rewarding people for writing content and doing micropayments. And well, we talked a little bit about blockchain technology and Bitcoin. Isn't that a logical conclusion to that? Doesn't that hook into that? Well,
it depends on how you want to implement it. As I understand it, the blockchain and cryptocurrencies are their purpose is mainly to make it untraceable and anonymous and secure at the same time. Whereas what I meant was something much more, this is maybe a vision and maybe it's probably utopian and forget about it, but what I would have liked to see was something much in the sense of what already existed in the Minitel in France, where where you didn't bother about paying, okay? The site decided what they wanted from you. Some were free, like all the government sites were free. Some were very expensive, some had free parts and paid parts and so forth. And it was France Telecom that sent you a bill at the end of the month saying you've made so many phone calls, you've looked at so many pages on the Minitel, it's so much. So you didn't worry about it, you just surfed around and everybody got paid for what you did, and it was all completely transparent. If you have to decide whether you're going to pay or not and so forth, then it becomes too complex.
I'm very happy that didn't really make it, because then I would have a very expensive bill at the end of the month.
Not necessarily, you see, not necessarily. I think there would be lots of people who would still have done, or you could have told your browser, I only want to go to sites where the advertising pays for it, right? But I could at least have said, well, I'll pay the standard for every page I read, but I don't want to pay for a full subscription because I'm also reading some other newspapers.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So you see the difference.
Can I hook into that?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that limit like the freeness of the internet, not monetarily, but like the idea of a free internet?
Because there is a pay barrier.
No. It's funny that this always comes back to the same thing. I have to insist that this is a potential, not a necessity. Okay, so I would certainly have published my stuff for free. CERN would always have published all their stuff for free. But a newspaper, they have to send out people. They have to pay them. They need to make money out of it. And to a large extent, they can do it with advertising, but not completely. So there is some information. There has to be some way of doing it. It's not a necessity. Now there is not even the potential. You can't do it. I cannot pay the BBC. No way.
I'm sure you can find
even if I want to, and say I'm going to pay you a euro per day, but keep the bloody advertising videos off my back that I have to watch every time again. I can't do it. I have no.
But I'm not really talking about monetarily free. I'm talking about no censorship free, and free as in thinking and.
Well, why would that interfere with it? Would there be censorship because of payment?
Because you want to provide to the people who want to pay for it?
What censorship is there on Facebook?
They have people like really reading all the posts. Huh?
Well, things get removed.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. What censorship is there on Apple's site? I asked the question on Apple's forum, and it was removed because it was not constructive.
I guess they didn't really Google your name then.
Well, no, I'm sorry. That is, And
what did you say?
What did I say? That I thought in the last few iterations of their operating system, I had become much less productive.
All right. Makes sense.
Makes sense, huh?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I think so. But it was considered not productive and my post was removed. Well, that's censorship. And it was all free. All right? So I published it on my site, but for free.
Okay. Any other questions? There is one in the back somewhere. Oh, the internet again. So we get questions from the internet, which is nice.
Yes, this time it's one of our colleagues from Brazil. It's more of a light-hearted question. Have you ever played any video games, and if so, what is your favorite video game of all time?
I'm sure you did.
Of course I've played video games. And now with my granddaughter, I sometimes play video games, but at her level, of course. She's only 8, so it's different type of video games. But yes, I have played video games.
Tetris.
But long time ago. I don't really have time for them now. I think my favorite game was Lode Runner, but that is a long time ago.
Roadrunner.
Load
Runner.
runner. And the reason I liked it was because you could make your own labyrinths. So you had to put your own stuff together, and then sometimes you couldn't really get to the end if you did it wrong.
Okay, so you could screw up your own game.
You could screw up your own game, yeah, very badly.
Interesting.
Yeah, very bad. And of course, the very first, but that was not a video game. That was not a video game. But the first computer game I played was, of course, Dragons and Dungeons, which was completely text-based. You can still find that.
Yeah, of course.
You know, you are in a dark forest, and right. But that's not really a video game, no.
Okay.
I've also played the pod racer of Star Wars and stuff like that. Yeah, no, I do play a video game today, if you can call it a video game. I have a flight simulator with 6 screens and
so I was
all the controls.
Robert flew in from Geneva this morning, right? Geneva this morning. And so I was a bit stressed in the weekend because Brussels Airlines announced that they would strike this week. And I asked him, like, I'm glad you made it. And he said to me, like, if I didn't fly with Swiss, I think you flew with Swiss, I would have flown myself, right? So
Yes.
The only thing he said, I would have made a little pit stop in Luxembourg to refuel, and then we would be fine. So.
Correct. Well, it's a bit more complicated than that, perhaps. But let me see. I must have it somewhere.
So any other questions? There's one here in the front. You're looking for your video game rig? Wow, that's really impressive. So if you really want to see it, it's really 6 screens, and yeah. It's
And to make that
you
run.
have 2 seats. There's one for your wife.
No, one for the instructor.
Okay.
To make that run at 30 frames per second on 6 high definition screens, I tell you.
It's a beast of a computer, right?
It's a beast of a computer. Yeah. It's a beast of a graphics card.
Did the chairs also vibrate and stuff? No.
No, that's 28,000 euros more.
Okay.
But you can get that, yeah. You can get
it's really impressive.
You can get that, but that's not really necessary. Sorry.
So we have one more question here in the front.
Yeah, when talking about fun and games, I've visited CERN once. I'm a physicist myself. I was very impressed by the Hadron Collider, which was in. We were able to visit it because it was in service. And I was wondering, so my actual question is, did you also work like on real physics, or did you?
No.
Mainly
I have never worked in physics, okay. So the only bit of quantum mechanics I did was in the physics class at engineering schools. So I've lived among them, right? But I don't know really what they are talking about. No, quantum physics is really weird, to say the least. It's very weird, but it's very interesting. It's very interesting.
It is. Thanks for supporting my fellow colleagues.
No, but it's. I think it's at the limits of what we can understand. I don't think our brains can really cope with it. I mean, all this stuff of entanglement. Do you understand that?
No, it's above my limits. I can do some.
But it's very interesting. No, I'm not joking. I'm smiling, but I'm not joking. It's very, very hard, very difficult.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh, there is one more from Mr. The Internet. I guess it's from Canada today.
Sorry, they keep harassing me here with questions. This one is from a colleague in Argentina.
Wow.
She's wondering what your thoughts are on the recent developments in internet privacy. We've seen Facebook go into a lot of trouble concerning this. So
GDPR,
how people, in Europe you have GDPR. Like, how is your opinion on all of this?
Well, you see, these are the questions that I'm dreading, because basically I'm a mechanical engineer, right? And not a sociologist or a psychiatrist or a politician. So I can only say that my personal point of view, which doesn't necessarily have a value. I think the question of privacy is a very tough one, and if you think about how you build trust, because that's what privacy is all really about. It's what you can trust and what you can't trust. If you think about trust, why are we in this room trusting each other? Because we're physically present. Why do I trust him?
That's a good question.
Because I know him from before, right? I know who he is. I've seen him before. I've had interactions with him before. And I know that I can trust you guys because you have this other physical connection. On the net, you don't have that physical connection. There's no physical entity from which to derive that trust. And it also goes orders of magnitude faster. So there is a problem there. But I don't know what the solution is. I don't know how you would get trust in something. And it's not going to be the blockchain. Forget that.
I was going to say maybe it's a blockchain.
No, it's not going to be the blockchain.
It's a funny thing because in all our heartbeat sessions, somehow we end up making jokes about the blockchain. So
okay.
So
well, we make jokes about the blockchain. I think trust is again one of these things that is coming from our biology. It's biological, and it's not something that you're going to be able to do digitally. It's really, really linked to our
human-to-human interaction.
Yeah, to our ape-like ancestry, to the fact that we are pack animals, and you know, cats don't have the problem. Dogs do. Cats don't have the problem, and so yeah. But it's
okay. I think we're out of questions from the audience. Robert, one of the things that people maybe don't know about you is that you designed the first logo for the World Wide Web.
Yes.
Right? And so we figured that it would be nice. I mean, I think you don't have stickers of that logo, do you?
No, not
Here
anymore. Oh no.
So we have, I think, like 200. I'll give you a package. So,
thank you very much.
So you can take them home, and wherever you go, you can distribute them to people.
Yeah, and there is our vision, right?
Yeah.
It says here, let's share what we know.
Yeah. So
of course, that's a very vague vision.
We had to actually, we kind of had to fake it because the only image we could find was too small to actually get it printed. So Yannick actually completely redrew it. But yeah, we now have it, and if you want more copies, you can always order them.
It's Zap Humanist letter type.
Oh, we couldn't find it. We were looking for it.
Yeah, it's out of fashion. If there are any designers,
we tried all these sites where you can figure out which font is. Okay. So Robert, thank you for coming over. It was a pleasure to have you. Let's give him another round of applause.
Thank you all.
So we do these kind of events, not this big, but every month, or we try to do it every month. It's not always easy to get a hold of speakers. But our next session is going to be in Ghent on June the 21st, and our guest will be Toon van Acht, which is the founder of data.be, which is a website to figure out information about companies in Belgium. He's a very active guy in the startup ecosystem. It's going to be an interesting talk. Over the summer, we're not going to host the event, and I think in September, Robin Wouters, the editor-in-chief and the founder of Techno.eu, is giving. I'm going to interview him. So, and there is other interesting guests going up right till the end of the year. So, thanks for being here. There is, of course, still a lot of drinks, and I think we ordered pizzas, right? I'm not sure if they're ready yet, but they'll arrive soon. So if you still have a little hunger, you can have those. Enjoy, everyone, and see you.
Thank you again. Thank you.